What if I told you that your greatest setback is actually a setup? That what looks like failure is just a classroom where champions are made? Listen to me. The difference between those who stay down and those who rise is not luck, not talent, but perspective. How do you see your setback? As the end or as the beginning of something greater? You were not designed to quit. You were created to overcome. And today, I came to tell you that your comeback is not just possible, it's inevitable if you understand the principles of the kingdom. Because in God's economy, every delay is a divine strategy, and every disappointment is raw material for destiny. So the question is, will you sit in the dust of failure, or will you rise and take back what's yours? Let's talk about how champions turn setbacks into comebacks. Listen to me carefully. Defeat is not what happens to you. Defeat is what happens in you. Some people lose before they even start, not because they are weak, but because they have already surrendered in their minds. They look at their failure and say, this is the end. But champions look at the same failure and say, this is a lesson. The difference is not in the situation. The difference is in the mindset. The way you think about your setback determines what happens next. You can see yourself as a victim, or you can see yourself as a warrior in training. You can see yourself as broken, or you can see yourself as a masterpiece under construction. How do you see yourself? Because however you see yourself is how you will live. The Bible says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Proverbs 23:7. That means your life will always reflect your dominant thoughts. If you think like a failure, you will live like a failure. If you think like a conqueror, you will live like a conqueror. This is why the enemy is not after your money, your job, or your reputation. He is after your mind. If he can control your thinking, he can control your future. That's why Paul said, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. Because until your mind changes, your situation will not change. Have you ever seen an elephant tied to a small rope? That elephant has the power to break free in seconds, but it stays in place. Why? Because when it was young, they tied it to something stronger. And no matter how hard it tried, it couldn't escape. Eventually, the elephant stopped trying. And now, even when it is fully grown and powerful, it still believes it's trapped. Many of you are living like that elephant. You have believed the lie that your past mistakes define you. You have believed the lie that you are stuck where you are. But I came to tell you today, the rope is a lie. You are not defeated. You are just deceived. God never called you to think small, live small, or expect small. He put His Spirit inside of you, which means there is no failure in you. Only untapped potential. But potential means nothing if you refuse to change your perspective. The Israelites wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, not because they were weak, but because they thought like slaves. They saw themselves as grasshoppers instead of warriors. And because of that, they died in the same place they started. Don't let that be your story. If you keep seeing yourself as a victim, you will never rise as a victor. If you keep seeing yourself as broken, you will never walk in restoration. Stop calling yourself what your setback called you. Stop labeling yourself by your failures. You are not a failure. You are a child of the King. And if God is your Father, then there is no situation that can keep you down. Champions are not those who never fall. Champions are those who refuse to stay down. So I ask you today, are you ready to think like a champion? Because until you change your mind, nothing else will change. Every setback carries a lesson. But not everyone learns. Some people go through failure and come out bitter, while others go through the same failure and come out wiser. The difference is not in what happened. The difference is in what they took from it. The question is not, why did this happen to me? The question is, what am I supposed to learn from this? Because if you don't learn the lesson, you are bound to repeat the cycle. Look at Peter. This man walked with Jesus, saw miracles with his own eyes, and declared, I will never deny you. But when the pressure came, when the heat was turned up, Peter did exactly what he swore he would never do. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And when that rooster crowed, guilt consumed him. Can you imagine what he felt? The shame, the regret, the thought that he had destroyed his destiny? That's where some of you are right now. You made a mistake, you let yourself down, you disappointed people who believed in you, and now you think your failure has disqualified you. But listen carefully. Jesus knew Peter would fail before Peter even did, yet he didn't reject him. Instead, he told Peter, when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. Luke 22:32. In other words, Peter, I know you will fall, but I also know you will rise. And when you do, use what you learn to help someone else. That's the power of learning the lesson. Failure doesn't have to be your end. If you extract the wisdom from it, it will be your beginning. The problem with most people is that they cry over the pain but never collect the wisdom. They complain about what they lost but never ask what they gained. Every experience in life is a teacher, but only those who are willing to listen will learn. If you go through betrayal, learn discernment. If you go through failure, learn resilience. If you go through delay, learn patience. God never allows a setback without planting a lesson inside it, but it's your job to find it. Think about Joseph. His own brothers betrayed him, sold him into slavery, and he ended up in prison for something he didn't even do. But he never allowed his suffering to make him bitter. He never wasted time complaining. He learned, he grew, he sharpened his wisdom. And by the time he stood before Pharaoh, he was ready, not because he had avoided pain, but because he had extracted wisdom from it. And when his brothers finally stood before him, he said, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Genesis 50, verse 20. That's the declaration of a man who learned the lesson. But what about you? Will you sit in the pain, or will you search for the wisdom? Will you let your setback define you, or will you let it refine you? Because champions don't just go through storms, they grow through them. And if you refuse to learn the lesson, you will face the same test again. So what will it be? Because the lesson is there. The question is, will you take it? Faith without action is an illusion. Some people pray for a comeback but never move. They cry out to God for restoration but refuse to take a step forward. They declare God will make a way, but sit still, waiting for the way to magically appear. Listen to me, faith is not sitting. Faith is stepping. Faith is not waiting for everything to be perfect. Faith is moving even when nothing makes sense. The woman with the issue of blood had been sick for 12 years. 12 years of suffering, 12 years of doctors failing her, 12 years of disappointment. She could have sat in her pain and accepted her situation. She could have said, if God wants to heal me, he will come to me. But no, she pressed through the crowd, she reached forward, and she touched the hem of Jesus' garment. And in that moment, healing flowed, not because she hoped, not because she wished, but because she moved. That's the problem with so many people today. They have dreams but never move. They have vision but never act. They pray but they don't prepare. They believe but they don't build. And then they blame God when nothing changes. Listen carefully. God will give you the promise, but you must take the steps. He told the Israelites, I have given you the land, but they still had to march. They still had to fight. They still had to take it. He gave them the victory, but he didn't exempt them from the process. Why? Because faith without works is dead. Look at David. He was anointed to be king, but after that he went right back to the field. He didn't sit around waiting for the throne to come to him. He kept moving, he kept serving, he kept preparing, and when Goliath showed up, David didn't just pray about it, he ran toward the giant. He picked up his stone, he pulled back his sling, and he took action. What if David had just stood there waiting for God to strike Goliath down? No! He understood that God had already given him the victory, but it was his responsibility to step into it. Some of you are standing in front of your giant, and you're praying for a miracle, but God is saying, pick up your stone. You're waiting for a breakthrough, but God is saying, move forward. You're crying over the setback, but God is saying, take action. Champions don't sit around waiting for perfect conditions. They create opportunities through movement. What are you waiting for? You've been talking about that business for years, but have you started? You've been saying you want to grow, but have you taken the first step? You've been waiting for God to open a door, but have you knocked? Jesus said, ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be opened. Matthew 7:7. That means there's a part you must play. Your comeback is already set in motion, but it won't manifest until you move. Faith is motion. Faith is action. Faith is stepping even when you can't see the whole staircase. Stop waiting. Stop delaying. Get up, take action, and watch what God does next. The voices around you will determine the choices within you. What you hear consistently will shape what you believe, and what you believe will shape how you live. Some of you are not stuck because you lack potential. You are stuck because you are surrounded by the wrong people. You are listening to voices that weaken your faith, limit your vision, and make you doubt the calling on your life. If you want to turn your setback into a comeback, you must guard your environment, because who you walk with will determine where you end up. When Job lost everything, his wealth, his family, his health, his so-called friends came to him not to encourage him, but to remind him of how bad things were. They sat around him and spoke words of doubt, fear, and condemnation. They told him, surely you must have done something wrong. Maybe God is punishing you. Imagine that. A man already in pain, now surrounded by people feeding his suffering instead of his faith. And that's exactly where some of you are. You are already fighting a battle, but the voices around you are making it worse. Instead of speaking life, they are speaking fear. Instead of building you up, they are tearing you down. And you wonder why you feel stuck. Look at Jesus. When he went to raise Jairus' daughter from the dead, there were people in the house already mourning. They had accepted death as the final outcome. But what did Jesus do? He put them out. He removed every voice of doubt from the room before performing the miracle. Why? Because the atmosphere matters. Miracles don't happen in places filled with unbelief. Comebacks don't happen in environments full of negativity. If you want to rise again, you have to separate yourself from those who keep pulling you down. Think about the 12 spies who went to scout the promised land. 10 came back saying, we are like grasshoppers in their eyes. We cannot take the land. Only 2, Joshua and Caleb, saw things differently. The majority had a defeated mindset, and their words spread fear throughout the entire nation. And because of that, an entire generation died in the wilderness. Not because they weren't strong enough, not because they weren't chosen, but because they listened to the wrong voices. Be careful who you allow to speak into your life, because one wrong voice can keep you wandering in circles for years. Some of you need to do a voice audit. Who are you listening to? Who are you spending time with? Who has your ear? Are they feeding your faith or feeding your fear? Are they pushing you toward purpose or pulling you into doubt? If the voices around you do not align with what God has spoken over you, then it's time to change your environment. God is ready to bring you into your comeback, but He cannot do it while you are still entertaining voices of defeat. Separate yourself from negativity. Surround yourself with people who see what God sees in you. Because when you get around the right voices, you will start making the right choices, and when you make the right choices, your comeback is inevitable. Your comeback is bigger than you. What you have been through is not just about your pain, it's about your purpose. The enemy didn't attack you just because of who you are. He attacked you because of who you will impact. He attacked you because of the generations tied to your obedience. If you make it through this, others will rise because of you. If you overcome this, doors will open for those coming after you. The question is not whether you will survive. The question is whether you will see the bigger picture. Look at Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and thrown into prison. Years of suffering, years of waiting, years of wondering if the dreams God gave him would ever come to pass. But when his time came, when he finally stood as second in command of Egypt, his brothers, the very ones who betrayed him, came before him in fear. And what did Joseph say? What you meant for evil, God meant for good, to save many lives. Genesis 50. In other words, I see the bigger picture now. I see that my pain had a purpose. I see that my setback was a setup not just for me, but for the salvation of others. What if what you are going through is not just about you? What if the very thing you thought would destroy you is actually preparing you to deliver someone else? What if your testimony will be the key that unlocks someone else's freedom? You cannot afford to quit because your comeback is connected to more than just your own life. Look at Esther, a Jewish girl taken into a foreign palace, hidden behind royal walls while her people faced destruction. She could have stayed silent. She could have said, "This has nothing to do with me." But her uncle, Mordecai, told her, "Who knows if you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Esther 4:14. And in that moment, she realized her position was not about her. It was about purpose. It was about delivering an entire nation. Your setback is not the end of your story. It is part of God's divine strategy. Every tear, every disappointment, every loss is producing something greater than you can imagine. But you have to endure. You have to hold on. Because if you quit now, you won't just rob yourself, you will rob everyone attached to your destiny. Jesus himself faced the ultimate setback, beaten, mocked, crucified, and buried in a tomb. His followers thought it was over. Hell thought it had won. But 3 days later, he got up. And when he rose, he didn't just rise for himself. He rose for you, for me, for all humanity. His comeback wasn't just personal, it was generational. That is the power of a true comeback. So I ask you again, can you see the bigger picture? Can you see that what you are going through is not the end, but a doorway into something greater? Champions don't just rise for themselves, they rise for those coming after them. Your comeback is not just for you. So stand up, rise again, and walk into the purpose that your pain has prepared you for. You have heard the word. You have received the challenge. Now the question is, what will you do with it? Will you sit in your setback or will you rise into your comeback? Will you allow failure to define you or will you use it to refine you? Champions are not those who never fall. They are those who refuse to stay down. You were created to win, built to overcome, and destined for greatness. Your setback was never meant to bury you. It was meant to build you. This is your moment, your opportunity to turn pain into purpose, obstacles into opportunities, and setbacks into comebacks. The world is waiting for your rise. Your future is calling. Your destiny is demanding action. No more excuses, no more delays, no more fear. Get up, move forward, step boldly into the life God has prepared for you. I believe in you. More importantly, God believes in you. He has already equipped you, strengthened you, and placed everything you need inside of you. Now it's time to act. It's time to step. It's time to become. Good luck on your journey, and may you walk in the fullness of your purpose. Thank you, and God bless you.